Everyone that has joined us through different platforms. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Advocate Sithole. And then I'm going to call upon Madam Simani.
Afternoon, Chair, and afternoon to our NESA colleagues as well as members of the public. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Simani. So today then, as we've said, we really got the main point of agenda here for our public hearing is for the amendment to Eskom's negotiated pricing agreements with Samancor Chrome Limited and Glencore-Merafe Chrome Venture ferrochrome smelters to provide electricity price relief. And in order to do this properly, obviously, we've got to follow the prescripts of the Act. It's one of the reasons why we have this public hearing. And in terms of the public hearing itself, we've got, I think, some presenters, 9 presenters in total, and then we'll give them a chance. And then also, once they've presented, we'll give members a chance to ask questions if they've got any questions to ask. But before I call upon the presenters, and I'm just going to ask again Mr. Mathebula to give briefly, maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes, a bit of a background to these amendments. So over to you, Mr. Mathebula, briefly 1 minute or 2 minutes to why we are here.
Mr. Chokwe, please.
Come in, Mr. Mathebula.
Right, Chair, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, as the regulator, Chair, we received an application by Eskom for an adjustment on their negotiated price index that they have, or price agreement that they have with Samancor Chrome Limited and Glencore-Merafe. And Chair, we are today here to hear the oral submissions from stakeholders after we received the written submissions from stakeholders, and the closing date was the 22nd. So today we are having a hearing to hear the oral submission before the regulator can conclude on this matter, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that now, we are going to go to our first presenter. And but before I call upon our first presenter, I must then just say that once again, I would like to welcome this electricity. I would like to welcome this electricity subcommittee public hearing on the proposed amendments to Eskom's negotiated pricing agreements with Samancor as well as Glencore. My name, as I've said already, is Willie Majola. I am the full-time regulator member responsible for electricity. As I've already introduced the members of the panel, so now, as we have said, we've done all the advertisement in various newspapers, on NESA's social media platforms, and on the website. All of this, obviously, in terms of the Regulator Act, which provides affected parties with opportunities to submit their views and present relevant facts and evidence to the regulator. The hearing is governed by the NESA rules on public hearings, which may be summarized as follows. All parties are required to make their different presentations under oath. Applicants have been allocated 15 minutes each to present and 20 minutes for the members. Only members of the panel may ask questions to the presenters. However, members of the public may submit questions via email to publichearings@nesa.org.za, after which the panel will determine how such questions will be addressed. And should any presenter wish to present information deemed confidential, the panel will rule on whether the hearing should be closed for that portion or whether the information should be submitted in writing. Please note that the audio recording captured via the microphone will constitute the official record of the hearing. The following house rules apply for this meeting. 1, all participants are required to remain muted when not presenting unless invited to speak. And 2, please keep your video switched off unless requested by the chairperson to switch it on. NESA has received 6 requests to present. So we are now going to start with the first presenter, Ms. Ukuletu Tumagude from Eskom. So can I ask Ms. Tumagude to switch on her video? And maybe with your help, Secretariat, if she has switched it on, because I'm multitasking here.
Good afternoon, Chair.
All right. So
Chair, the
thank
video
you.
is on.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Tumagude, please raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you are about to give before this panel is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And then for the
Yes, I do.
So for the record, please state your name, organization, and designation.
My name is Ukuletu Carol Dumagude. I am currently with Eskom Distribution and acting general manager in the edge business.
Thank you for that. Please, Madam Dumagude, please remember to forward your presentation to publichearings@nesa.org.za. With that, you may switch off your video and you may proceed with your presentation, and you've got 15 minutes to present.
Okay, through you, Chair, I wanted to check if you would like to swear in other people in the room as they will assist in the question and answer session.
Okay, yes. What are the names of the other people so that you can swear them in? Thank you for that. The first person.
Okay, the first person I do have Ms. Agnes Mlambo.
Okay, and the second one.
And the second one is Hal.
Hello, sorry, if you can repeat, please.
The second one is Kyle.
You are breaking.
Kyle Meholz.
Hello, Ms. Tumagude, you are breaking.
The second person is Mr. Kyle Meholz.
Carl Nichols.
Yes, and the third person is Nell Nega.
Sorry?
The third
Sorry.
person is Snell Nega.
Okay. No, thank you for that. So, Madam Mlamo, can I start with you then, if you can switch on your microphone? Sorry, your video. Please switch on your video.
Wait, it is on, Chair.
All right, thank you for that. And then please raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you are about to give before this panel is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
For the record, please state your name, organization, and designation.
My name is Agnes Mlambo, working for Eskom. I'm currently the acting group executive for distribution.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mlambo. And then you can now switch off your video. And then we can now ask Mr. Carl Nicole to also switch on the video and let us know when your video is on.
Chair, they are all in one room.
So they're all in one room.
They are all in one room. I suggest that to save time, Chair, let's ask them all that are going to participate to raise their hands at once. Their names have already been stated on record, and then we swear them in collectively so we can save time, Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Mabunda. So let's just do that. Let's ask everybody to raise their hand and take in their to swear by raising their hands.
Now, please switch on your video.
And please switch on your video, yes. All right.
Chair, their hands are up. We may proceed.
No, thank you. No, thank you. So can you then solemnly declare that the evidence you're about to give before the panel is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Chair.
All right.
I do.
Okay, that's the third one now. Thank you. I think you've already stated your name. We know the organization. No, it's fine. So I think on that note, then, can I suggest that we now move on to hear your presentation from the Eskom distribution side?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Share the slide. Okay, just to give a bit of the context, we have made an agent application to NESA for approval of the amendment of the currently existing NPAs between Samancor and Glencore. Chair, is also worth noting that the total consumption for these customers when they're operating normally is around 12.8 terawatt-hour a year. And then the context of how the justification for the application was made, it was the risk associated with us losing such a big load. And then the immediate loss of this load would have translated to the under recovery of the fixed cost, amongst other things. And then that would have translated to the upward pressures on the remaining customers in terms of the RCA recovery of the MYPD. And then it was against this background where then this must not be seen as a solely tariff concession. However, it must be seen as a load retention. And then the specific request, Chair, for approval that we require from NESA in terms of the application we've made is that we would like to adjust the current existing NPA to incorporate the more stringent contracting conditions that we have incorporated to ensure that we retain the strategic load in terms of the take-or-pay commitments, as well as ensure the revenue protection mechanism is incorporated accordingly. And then also while ensuring that the risk sharing mechanism is being spread between the two contracting parties. And then also, Chair, the current existing NPAs for both these smelters is expiring in December 2029. And with the approach and the contracting mechanism, it was important that we also request an extension for the NPA timelines, mainly for Samancor, I'll expand on the next slide in terms of the different contracting terms between the two customers. Chair, if you could go on the next slide. And then, Chair, is also worth noting that it's been a journey where we've been to NESA a couple of times post the contracting with the smelters. We started off well in 2024, where they were at full production with the NPA price provided to them. Then in Feb 2025, that's when then they started to express the economic hardship, mainly posed by the Chinese competition, because Chinese are being sponsored via their government and they are smelting cheaper compared to our local smelting industries. And hence why then the competition was not levelized between our local smelting with their competitive peers. And then, Chair, under the mega flex price, the electricity cost is around 35 to 40% in terms of their production. And so it remained structurally uncompetitive for them to continue with the current NPA price that was given. And then hence why we then came to NESA to apply for the further amendment on the NPA price, which then resulted to NESA granting us the 87.7% per kilowatt hour in January of this year. But while that was obviously seen as an interim measure, it did not allow the smelters to even break even or to sustain their load up to full production. It only allowed them to save one or two smelters, which then translated to at least 40% of their load. Then it defeated the purpose why we want to stabilize and retain this load. And then it meant we need to do something further to ensure that we resuscitate and save this industry, Chair. Then there is where the 62 cents per kilowatt hour, in terms of the benchmark that was done, this was the figure that was more relevant, that would allow the smelters to operate at their full production, and they would be able to break even, and it's obviously aligned to also the global marginal cost curve. So once we have done Chair, the market insights was done to validate the 62 cents, and then also these two smelters were offered the same deal, the same contracting principles. However, depending on their risk appetite, the contracting term then became different. For Samancor, the contracting term is a 5-year contracting term with a minimum 3 years take-or-pay, volumes of 80%. And the contracting terms for Glencore is a 3-year with a minimum 2 years take-or-pay volumes. So you would now understand why on the first slide I mentioned that part of our submission we requested an NPA extension from the December 2029 to cover the full 5-year term specifically for Samancor, so that we align ourselves accordingly with the proposed contracting mechanism that we are bringing today. And then to ensure the risk as well as the revenue protection, we have incorporated what we call as a deferred revenue mechanism, where on point of implementation we will then measure and keep track of the revenue difference between the proposed price and what the smelters are currently paying. This will assist us should there be any default in between the contracting term to make sure that we claw back that revenue shortfall. We've also incorporated 50-50 split on the upside sharing. And then when we take both the smelter total consumption, the revenue that it will translate into is around 42.5 billion over the contracting period. And then also the reason why we are doing what we are doing is to avoid the severe coal take-or-pay exposure that we would have otherwise been exposed to, among other things such as the fixed cost. So the justification for the financial proposal of this tariff was based on the coal take-or-pay exposure that we are currently will be exposed to if the do nothing scenario take place. And then we are obviously here under the existing umbrella and the legislation of the existing NPA framework. We then requesting to amend and incorporate the new contracting principles, as well as extending the terms accordingly. The intent is really not to dilute the shortfall to increase the rest of to increase the tariff to the rest of the impacted customers, but we would ring fence this accordingly and make sure that it does not negatively impact the rest of the customers. That would be my last slide, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Dumagude. And now, I don't know whether the other colleagues at Eskom wants to add anything before I open it up to the members.
No, Chair, we will take questions.
Okay. Thank you for that. So on that note, then, I'm going to open it to the members of the regulator present here to show by hands if they've got any questions. I see Mr. Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks, Madam Dumagude, for the presentation and your team. I would like to, when I look at slide 3, where you talk of the 62 cents per kilowatt hour being aligned to global marginal cost curve, my question is that, is this curve static or it could adjust? And in the event of the adjustment, then what happens? Just like to get the clarity. And then I note on slide 4 the terms that are different. Maybe one must still look in detail. Maybe you can talk high level as to what influence the differences that are put there and what that means. And you talk of ring fencing, but what measures are in place to avoid any negative exposure of Eskom customers outside of the NPA? Lastly, in the manner that you are dealing with this whole thing, may not necessarily ventilate it here and now, but I think would appreciate that you send in writing maybe in terms of how best to deal with the matter. If you look at it, it's been more like incremental applications instead of the being overarching in terms of our approach. And also taking due regard that even in the presentation where we're looking at the previous arrangement, there was this outcry to say, let there be a more overarching holistic view taken and not only zoom into these two players. So I would just like you to reflect on that aspect. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. And then I'm going to call upon Madam Maseti.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to Eskom for the presentation. I just have some questions of clarity, starting off with the amount. Starting off with the amount that the 62 cents per kilowatt. I just want to understand how the breakdown was done, in the sense that whether the price covers all the sort of the total cost, or a particular or certain percentage of the fixed costs, and whether it covers also the marginal cost. To what extent does it cover the marginal cost? If you can, in your response, clarify exactly whether that marginal cost is a short run or is a long run marginal cost, and whether that will be sort of the ceiling price, so to speak, to say, below this price, we're not going to go down, no matter the circumstances. I do want to understand how you arrived at that, apart from the fact that the customer indicated that this is the price that they believe will be sustainable for their business. But from your perspective, when you worked out that price, what did you have in mind from the perspective of the marginal cost, as well as taking care of the recovery of the fixed cost? If you can at least spend some time to clarify us on that. Then the second thing that I would like to understand is the issue of the revenue shortfall from Eskom, because it's important for us as the regulator that we are apprised about this and be satisfied about the justification that is given by Eskom insofar as the X amount of, or the approximate revenue shortfall that Eskom has worked out, and how that revenue shortfall is going to be recovered. And then also, I just want as a third question to understand whether the Eskom has made any arrangements for ring fencing the sort of this, so that there is no kind of cross subsidization that will end up compelling the standard customers to then be paying a higher price so as to compensate for the revenue shortfall. Then the fourth question that I would like to find out in your presentation, where you make reference to the differentiation of the duration of the contracts between the two companies. One is 5 years, the other is 3 years. I just see this one line that states that it is based on the risk. It's not based on the pricing. I'd like to understand the nature of the risk. Are we talking about market-related risk, certain economic risk? This is important because the justification that has been presented and advanced before us is that the market conditions where the two are facing a competition in the global competition, they are affected by others that are much more competitive, especially when it comes to the energy cost and the other variables. So how is the one with the 3 years going to be shielded from the impact that they are before us for? So how is that impact going to now be ameliorated for the one that is only for 3 years as opposed to 5 years? And if you can please explain those kind of risk, market-related, economic and competition-related risk, I will appreciate that. For now, I would like to stop there, Chairperson, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And then I'm going to call upon Advocate Sithole.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to the Eskom team. Mine, it's just one point of clarity. It may be covered by the other panel members, but in a different manner. My question is, or rather the point of clarity is the proposed tariff going to be sustainable for the smelters? Noting that we previously had a similar matter coming before the regulator with a different amount, and now we are taking it further down. And my question is it deemed to, or rather, is it going to be sustainable in terms of the analysis that Eskom would have done. And at the same time, looking on the Eskom side, will Eskom remain viable based on the analysis that they would have done, considering the impact thereof on Eskom's revenue requirements? And that is just my point, Chairperson, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Advocate Sithole. So on that note now, I'm going to ask Eskom to provide a response through you, Madam Dumagude.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will then allow Kai come in and cover mainly the questions related to the cost justification.
Chair, through
Okay.
you. I'm gonna deal with the question from Member Masetti around the 62 cents breakdown and whether we've used long run or short run marginal costing in this regard. Neither have been applied in direct response to the question. I think the evaluation of the foundation price that Eskom could afford in this regard was based on our exposure to underlying coal contracts and the risk of this volume loss to the cost that we would incur on those coal contracts that would benefit us through no opportunity for sales or for revenue. So effectively, that's what we've looked at in terms of the evaluation of that 62 cents. It is the foundation price that we believe is affordable to Eskom in that regard. It's not based on fixed cost recovery, nor classic fixed cost recovery, nor long run, nor short run marginal costing. It is purely based on gathering value from exposure to underlying coal contract costs. In terms of the question from Member Mkhize around cost curve staticness or adjustability, I think the reality is that the contracting clauses will help us protect both parties around some of the risk and benefit sharing in regards to ferrochrome price development in the industry and in the market. Obviously, the agreements will be subject to annual escalations. They are not static agreements. So I think there's a degree that of protectiveness that comes through that approach from our perspective. And then I think my last answer that I'm going to give here goes to the question that was raised by Advocate Sithole. I think from a sustainability perspective, obviously we've looked at this within the next 3 to 5 year framework from an Eskom perspective, which is why the contracts are extended for no more than 3 to 5 years. And there is a direct financial benefit to us through the retention of this volume from an Eskom perspective. I cannot answer directly for either of the potential customers. They would need to provide those insights. I think they've got a slot on the presentation agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll then allow Ms. Lambo to also come in. Thank you, Gogo. Through you, Chair, and again, good afternoon. So one of the questions that have been raised is if the exposure of the customers is the same, why we're differentiating on the contracting, and we said it based on the risk appetite. So how we have structured and as part of the application is that built in there must be take or pay, and therefore which then means the customers will not be able to terminate the contract early. If they do, they will face the same penalty as if they had consumed that energy. So there were two options that were presented to both customers, which was one, the 5 years. In there, it came in with the 3 years take or pay. And then in the 2 years, the customer, due to economic hardship, could terminate. Or if not prepared to have the 3 year take or pay, then the other option was to only contract for 3 years, but have the 2 years take or pay. That is why we're saying it was based on the risk appetite of the customer, because then it was based on what the customer is willing to take or to risk in terms of the take or pay. Do they want to contract to a 2 year take or pay,
or do they want to contract on the 3 years take or pay? But both options were made available to the same customers. And again, the reason why we've structured this a proposal like that, it is to retain the volumes. And for us to retain the volumes, it gives us opportunity in terms of the fixed cost that we're exposed to, as already covered by Carl, that we can then have enough time to be able to get ourselves out of those contracts, because those contracts were based on the volumes that we were aware of at the beginning of the period, or for us to be able to find alternative volumes for those same volumes and not to be able to incur any costs. I think in the main, that is what has been proposed, or rather in terms of the questions that have been asked. Oh yeah, in terms of what other means in terms of the framework, why the incremental applications? At the time, you would recall, Chair, that we were looking for subsidies from the government at the time, and that is why there was a build-up to the cost. In the absence of that, we then had to go and look at the least loss a way of a pricing, and that is why we ended up with not a build-up on marginal cost, but rather the inverse was that if we lose these volumes, what are we exposed to? And in our assessment, we would be worse off. We are, however, working with the DE to develop a framework beyond these NPAs that will help us to then deal with other customers that may or may not be facing similar challenges. But the trigger has always been that the customer is experiencing economic hardship. We have built in the sharing mechanism. That way it will help us to recover some of the losses that we will be incurring with the 62 cent. That way, if the commodity prices do recover, there will be an opportunity for us to be able to close that gap. And that is why there is that upside mechanism. But also the minimum volumes also gives us that much of assurance that we are not as exposed as we are without the volumes. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And then to cover the question that was saying, is the proposed a short medium term just to cover us between the 3 to 5 years. However, in parallel to what we are doing now, we are exploring other means as to how can a long-term sustainable solution be put together. Thanks. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. And now I'm going to check with the members if they've got any follow-up questions, if they can show by show of hands if they've got any follow-up questions. Yes, I see Mr. Mkhize.
Maybe, thanks for the responses, first of all. Maybe I just missed it. I didn't get a response regarding what measures they've taken to ensure that there's no negative impact on the remainder of their customers who are not part of these NPAs in this particular case. If they prefer to respond in writing, I'm also good with that, but I didn't get that response. Thank you.
Madam Tumagude.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We are going to ensure that the revenue shortfall is not socialized through the MYPD by tracking this from the implementation. So part of the conditions is also the deferred revenue mechanism. So the intent is to track the revenue shortfall from the inception all the way up until the full terms of the contract, and we will then track and report it differently to ensure that this is not socialized and negatively impacting the rest of the other customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Tumagude. Any other questions, follow up from members?
I'm covered, Chairperson. If they can just talk to this issue of the marginal cost curve, the adjustment thereof. But if we put these figures and the changes again, one would rather have something that is more flexible. Maybe instead looking at some kind of a range. I note that there's a take or pay, but having some kind of a range, especially when it comes to the pricing, kind of helps to have an understanding. So, but they may not respond here and now. If they can just write that, you know, because it's a broad principle issue that they can kind of shed light on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. So I take it, Madam Tumagude and the Eskom team, you've noted the request from Mr. Mkhize to provide that additional information. So on that note, then, I think we are going to move away from this particular point. We're going to go to the next presentation. And I see here it's got two people, Mr. Sitters and Mr. Fullard. So I'm now going to then, I'm not sure, yeah. And starting with Mr. Sitters, I can see you've now switched on your camera. So now, if you can please raise your hand and affirm the following. Sorry, if you can actually start by stating your name, then switch on your camera, or your camera will switch on, then raise your right hand and affirm the following. Yes, Mr. Yes, if you can raise your right hand and affirm the following, do you solemnly declare that the evidence you are about to give before the panel is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it's the truth. And I'm also Japie Fullard. I'm the CEO of Glencore Alloys.
All right, thank you. So just a reminder to both of you to please remember to forward your presentation to publichearings@nesa.org.za. So you may now proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you just allow me, I am going to share. Just want to put it in presentation mode. Okay, I just want to make sure that you can all see the presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, thank you, sir. We can see it.
I just want to see if I can make it full screen mode. Yeah, there we go. Okay, good afternoon all. We are going to take you through the presentation, myself and also Steph. I am representing both Glencore and also Merafe, and Steph will then presenting therefore Samancor. I will take us through the first couple of slides, and then Steph will do the slide number 4 and slide number 5, and then we will then conclude at the end. I think it's also important that some of the questions that were raised already with regards to the terms, the 3-year term and the 5-year term, I think that it would be prudent, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, that I already allude to that as part of the presentation, because then it will also assist in that regard, if that's okay. I just want to confirm if that would be okay.
That's okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is just the summary of what we are going to talk to you about today. You would have seen many of these slides previously when we did present also during our previous negotiated price agreement slides. We will talk about the global ferrochrome market share, exactly what happened and why we are in the situation where we are. Also, we're going to talk about the tariff impact on smelters and Eskom. I think that's also going back when we had our negotiations there with Eskom. We mutually agreed that from a beneficiated perspective, to still have a revenue is better than actually no revenue. I think what's also important to note is that over the last year, it's now more than a year, Glencore-Merafe did not have one of their 22 furnaces running. We only started up Lion Smelter based on that 87 cents because from a financial perspective, it wasn't viable for us to start up. Hence the reason why we did also apply for the 62 cents. We are going to talk about the upstream and downstream beneficiation. Critical that, and to understand that we also need reductants, anthracite, and it's very important for us in our upstream and also downstream, and then we will do the conclusion together. I think I'm going to stop at this slide. If you have a look at the right-hand side, very important to note that from a ferrochrome export revenue perspective, what happened over the last 3 years, you can see that the revenue came down from 78 billion down to 68 billion, all the way down to 31 billion in 2005. And currently, if we do not get the 62 cents, I can assure you that unfortunately, that will most probably stay at the 6 billion currently. That just shows you that there's a massive deterioration in terms of the revenue for the country. If you have a look on the left-hand side, very important to note that between Samancor and Glencore-Merafe, or let's say South Africa, we sit with 80% of the chrome reserves worldwide. We've got a capacity of 4.9 million tons of ferrochrome capacity currently, and you will see that in terms of quantity, sorry, somebody's not muted. Thank you. So if you just have a look at from that 80%, if you just look on the right-hand side at the bottom, in 2023 we produced 4 million tons, then 3.6 million tons. We did show the 1.6 million tons in 2025, but I know that we did not sell between ourselves and Samancor. We didn't sell more than 1 million tons. So you can see that there's a steep decline in terms of what we've got in terms of ferrochrome capacity versus what we are currently producing. Yet we are sitting with 80% of the chrome ore reserves in South Africa. Also very important to note on the slide is that the sector supports about between 120 and 160,000 jobs. That is direct and also indirect. And there's a direct support for jobs between 15 and 25,000 people. Steph, just want to confirm if there's anything you would like to add here, or can I continue?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Albie.
Okay, so if we then go to this slide, I'm sure that many of you on the call would have seen this, and this is actually quite heartbreaking to see this, what happened in South Africa. And I think a very important point is that all of the production of chrome into ferrochrome lands up predominantly in stainless steel. And you can see that the demand, and I'm going to now refer to 3, let's say, important aspects here. And first I'm going to go to the green bar, and you'll see that in the green bar, South Africa had 51% of the world's ferrochrome production happened within South Africa, where the Chinese only at that stage produced 5% of ferrochrome. Then as time goes on, you would see that South Africa drops all the way down now in 2025 to 10% of ferrochrome capacity or production, not capacity, production happened in South Africa. and where the Chinese have increased, and you'll see that there's a cut point there around about 2011, 2012, where the Chinese surpassed us and they became the biggest ferrochrome producer in the world. Very important would be the grey bars. The grey bars is the export of chrome ore out of South Africa into China. And that is to support the red graph of the Chinese. So in a perfect world, if we would have curbed and ensured that we kept on with the ferrochrome demand, we would have been able to convert chrome into ferrochrome in South Africa. But unfortunately, due to a couple of constraints, being electricity one, and we'll come also to the next slide, which is quite critical, and you know, that would be on the price of electricity. That just made it uneconomical for us as South Africans to convert chrome into ferrochrome. Hence the reason why those grey bars, you can see that there's quite a steep increase in ferrochrome or in chrome units or chromite, raw chromite leaving South Africa. I think also critical to know for the platform is stainless steel it's not dependent on either chrome or ferrochrome. It's chrome units. So whatever happens is that the chrome gets converted into ferrochrome and then gets converted into stainless steel. So ultimately, South Africa does have the chrome units, but it's important to know that we have lost out on the beneficiation of that inside South Africa. So I think that is a very important point here. If we go to the next slide, Steph, please, if there's something that you want to add, please feel free. But on this slide, this is the main elephant in the room. And this is the reason why on the previous slide, you will see that the green bar has actually subsided all the way down. And that's because of the price of electricity just went out of control. And because of that, there wasn't any investors' confidence anymore to convert chrome into ferrochrome in South Africa. We all know what happened to load shedding. I must say, if I have a look at what Eskom did over the last couple of years, last 2 or 3 years in turning around Eskom, is something phenomenal, to such a point that we have now got additional electricity. I think for that reason, it's very important that it doesn't matter, even at the 62 cents, Eskom will still receive a huge amount of revenue. Without the 62 cents, it means that Eskom will not receive the revenue. And for that reason, it also then means that somebody else will have to pick up that tab. So I think for the whole country, it's critical that we make sure that we do at least convert chrome into ferrochrome. A very important point as well on the next slide, what we will, we'll talk about would be the baseload. We are the baseload customers, and tonight when everybody of us are sleeping, if all the smelters runs, it means that all those electrons will be used up and Eskom will still receive the revenue. Eskom also, while Gugu did present, she talked about the 12.8 terawatt hour. You can see that the total South African smelting power consumption is about 10% of total Eskom electricity sales. And out of that 23 terawatt hour, us and Samancor together, we are about 12.8 terawatt of that. And like I said, if you have a look at what we used last year and over this first quarter, it's all, not, even a tenth of that. Thanks. Steph, over to you.
Yapi, thank you very much. Chair, I think this slide is where we want to emphasize the proposed NPA amendment is a win-win for both sides. On the smelter side, electricity, as you can see, is up to 52% of production cost. And, a competitive tariff provides essentially relief and moves us closer to the Eskom cost, to the Chinese cost levels. I think it's also designed to prevent further layoffs and restart idle capacity, and that's part of the conditions of the amended NPA terms. And I think let me underline that only around 11 of the total of 66 furnaces in South Africa is currently operating, and it's mainly due to the fact that, as per Yapi's previous slide, the increase in electricity pricing over the last decade. For Eskom, we believe that the take-or-pay structure provides predictability, secure revenue, and it also monetizes surplus capacity, particularly in the off-peak period, as Yapi also mentioned. And I think an important point as well to add is that, Eskom alluded to the coal take-or-pay liability, and I think that is a very, very important point, and we play a big role in our offtake, which is essentially 24/7. So we provide Eskom with interruption flexibility, we believe, and in doing so, we also then support the system stability for Eskom. So to us, this is not a concession. I think this is more a commercial arrangement where Eskom sells power it would otherwise struggle to place. And hence again, we baseload customers and we use power when everybody is sleeping. Yapi, I don't know if you want to add anything on this slide, or can I continue?
Yeah, thanks, Steph. I do believe that it is important to note that with our negotiations that we had with Eskom, some people might feel that we are now going to get 62 cents, we as the ferrochrome ministry, and we are going to make a lot of money. I can tell you now, even at 62 cents, it's very close to break even. But if there are a supply-demand change, what we've arranged or agreed with Eskom is what we call an upside sharing mechanism, is that we do not only expect to get. If we do get money above a certain threshold, and that means that we are into a profit situation, we are more than willing to share that upside with Eskom. And that's also just to show that from that perspective, this is not for us just making money. I mean, we can make money by just selling all the ore. That is, the reality. This is to make sure that we do keep our furnaces in operation and our people employed. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for that addition, Yapi. Then moving on to the next slide. We believe that our industry is not an island. It sits in the center of a value chain that extends, in both directions. And, if one looks at our upstream reductant suppliers, Jindal, Tendele, ArcelorMittal, for them, they account roughly 7,000 to 9,000 direct jobs, and that's just the largest suppliers. We have many more smaller suppliers with real jobs that is currently lost. Most of the reductant suppliers, and specifically the anthracite suppliers, have really closed or trimmed down significantly due to the fact that we are not operating. In addition, we spend roughly 2 billion rand annually on transporting final products, both road and rail, thereby supporting private road transporters as well as Transnet. On the downstream side, our ferrochrome feeds Columbus Stainless, which in turn supplies the South African automotive industry. And that sector employs 500,000 people and close to 1 million jobs depending on it. So when a smelter closes, and we have currently many that is closed, it damages, that damage does not stop at the smelter gate. It ripples outward through mining, logistics, stainless steel, manufacturing, and has a massive impact on the potential GDP growth of South Africa. So essentially, this industry is to our mind a strategic national industry that we need to protect. Yapi, any additions that you would like to add here?
Yeah, the other thing, Steph, is I can say what we already know is that we've got so many anthracite mines currently in South Africa that's already on care and maintenance. We've got stockpiles of anthracite that's not been used because anthracite, as you know, is a direct reductant into our product. And for that reason, that ripple effect is really tangible. Thanks. Thanks, Steph.
Okay.
That will then bring us to our last slide, and we will talk to this jointly. But I think for South Africa, ferrochrome industry plays a critical role. I mean, this is a critical role in the national economic development. I think we spoke about the contribution in terms of the GDP. We talked about the people. We also talked about all the logistical support that we do give. I mean, if you have a look at Transnet, if you have a look at all the trucking companies, the sector's competitiveness has deteriorated. And I think the question was also asked, are we going to be sustainable? And I think we'll touch on that a bit later. Currently, I can tell you that we are competing against the Chinese out there, and at least the 62 cents will give us a fighting chance. It's also important to note, and I want to make this clear, is that it comes to that 3 years and 5 years term. Is the 62 cents going to be a silver bullet? I don't think so. No, it will bring us into the ring to be able to compete against the Chinese. But we, as the industry, will also have to do our part. So we are not sitting back at all. I can just promise you that even this morning, we were in a meeting where we talked about what we can do to make our industry even more sustainable beyond only, the 62 cents. If you have a look at South Africa increasingly exporting chrome ore whilst losing ferrochrome production, it just indicates that there's a value erosion here instead of a value creation. The South African MPA tariff mechanism could help retain demand, restart capacity, and preserve economic value. I think that's very important. I mean, that, and again, talking from a Glencore-Merafe perspective, we've closed down Lydenburg smelter some 5 years ago. It's going to be impossible to restart it because it's been standing for 5-6 years. It's going to cost billions and billions of rands to restart that. Rustenburg smelter the same. So it's very important that what this will do, what the 62 cents will do, is it will anchor at least what we've got. And I think that is a very important point. I'm not sure if there's anything, Steph, that you would like to add here before we just give a bit of clarity around the 3-year and, the 5-year.
Yapi, thanks for that. Maybe just...
Sorry, excuse me. Look, can I just give you now 1 minute to wrap up everything? Just 1 minute. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Just one point to add, Yapi. I think, Chair, this decision will set a precedent for South African beneficiation policy. I think government has long held that South Africa should beneficiate its mineral endowment and not export raw ore. So I think you've seen through the data and through the presentation how this industry particularly has deteriorated with regards to production and its competitive advantage, which we had many years ago. So I think that to me is just a additional point that we'd like to raise. Yapi, I think let's go on to the last point.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think just the reason between the 3-year and the 5-year, first of all, it's a shareholder's decision. So it comes from the board. and it's about the appetite which each company has got. The one thing that we cannot do, as you know, from a competition perspective, it's something that we must have the ability to be flexible, and specifically for Glencore-Merafe, our supply demand and our customers would be different than that from Samancor. I mean, Samancor could speak for themselves, but purely from a risk appetite perspective, and also that locking mechanism of the 2 years take or pay. Remember, I think it's important that everybody on the platform knows that we are locking ourselves in for 2 years regardless. And I think a very important point that even in a down demand, we are still going to be let's say paying at the up to the 80%. So there's definitely a risk appetite difference between the two companies. That's it from my side, Steve.
Thanks. There'll be nothing to add from our side, Chair. I think it really boils down to risk appetite, and hence the reason for the different terms. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sittert and Mr. Fullard. I'm now going to call upon the members of the regulator if you've got any questions. Through you, members, by show of hands. Yes, Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thank you very much, Mr. Sittert and Mr. Fullard. On slide 4, you're highlighting the fact that in China surpassing South Africa in the production of ferrochrome, they are actually using primarily as South African ores. And I take it that this should be one aspect of addressing that matter. In your engagement with government, are there any other policy levers that you are looking at besides just this tariff issue to deal with this very upset situation? And then I would also like to know from your side, you're saying that the South African, on slide 6, South African NPA tariff mechanism could help retain demand and restart capacity. It's important that you also have some kind of a long range. Is this mode of engagement helpful? What do you suggest needs to be done to improve? You may engage with us here, and if there's some issues that of the nature that they're also confidential, you may just write to NERSA, just to address this thing holistically. And then you are saying that without targeted intervention, the capacity will continue to exit South Africa and is unlikely to return. By capacity, you mean the product. Just want to clarify. You mean the production capacity, and with the new technologies, what are the long-term prospects? Have we really looked at the long-term prospects so that whatever is being devised is actually cognizant of that fact? And then also related to that, you've stated that you are very close to break even with that 62 cents per kilowatt hours price. And you said that in terms of the upside, there is sharing there that will take place. On the downside, you are satisfied that the 80% take or pay arrangement is satisfactory, or would actually be able to be sustainable? Just want you to understand that aspect, because if one looks at the downside, I don't see any other thing that can come in except that 80%. Just for you to reflect on that, just to get my mind clear on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. I now call upon Madam Maseti.
Thank you, Chair. Just two things from my side. I just want to find out on the issue of the risk, as to how that risk is factored into the cost. The risk appetite is factored into the cost competitiveness, so that one can just get a sense, even if it's sort of going to be affecting a sort of an export price, but maybe also internally, domestically. I just want to understand, how that risk appetite is translated. For instance, if I can be clarified on that. And then the second thing to be clarified on the duration. It's just to understand how confident are you about the duration, because you probably do not have control in terms of the market conditions, how they would improve such that they would sustain your business the way that you used to be. So if I can just get those two questions clarified for me, or the third one actually is on the issue of the take or pay, just to ascertain the extent of your confidence in the sustainability of the business. If, for instance, you get the price right being discounted, and then at the same time you are amenable to allow the take or pay for purposes of volumetric risk. I just want to understand if that would work for you for the duration of this arrangement, 5 years as well as 3 years, so that they go hand in hand, as opposed to having or doing away or removing the take or pay. I just want to understand, how did you weigh that situation from the perspective of your sustainability? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Maseti. And now I call upon Advocate Sithole.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to the team from the smelters for their presentation. Mine is just one point of clarity. In the presentation, I heard Mr. Fuller saying that the proposed 62 cents per kilowatt hour is not enough. And he said that it is merely going to enable the smelters to operate in a competitive manner. However, in slide 6, I do note that there is an indication there that this proposed tariff is going to enable the restarting of dozens of furnaces. So I thought that with the restarting of other furnaces, the operations will really improve and bring some profitability over and above the competitiveness. And I just want him to just clarify that, because that is my interpretation. If I'm not correct, I think his response will assist me to really understand those 2 points that I've raised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Advocate Sithole. So let me now allow Mr. Sittard and Mr. Fuller to respond.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the questions. I must say, extremely valid questions. The first one was from Mr. Mkhize. I'm just quickly going to go through the ones that I can address, and then Steph, please, if you can assist me. But the mechanisms, there was a question raised. Are we also assisting government in looking at other mechanisms, and what are those mechanisms? I can tell you that there's a lot of questions with regards to, and I can call it the way it is, or taxes or bans or whatever. I think it's very important that there's a lot of positive things that's coming out of government. I must say that we were very pleased to see, as you know, the critical minerals document that was circulated last year doesn't only look at certain, or let's say electricity on its own. It looks at things like stopping illegal mining, which we know is a massive issue in South Africa. I mean, 10%, it's been envisaged that 10% of all chrome ore leaving South Africa has been mined illegally. So if you do that, you then bring already the supply demand back into equilibrium. So that will help quite a lot. And I can tell you from the companies, from even our own companies, we are assisting the police to pick up illegal vehicles and to impound them and things like that. So illegal mining is a big thing that will definitely help us to bring the supply demand back into where it should be. That's the first one. The second one, I'm not sure if you know this, but about 3 weeks ago, they've already approved a special economic zone in the Steelpoort Valley. So what they want to do is they want to rather incentivize, and I think this is very important that we all on the platform understand. You can ban the sales of chrome ore, but it will never happen because we are already producing close to 30 million tons of chrome ore, and we only, let's say, have got a capacity of 4.9. So you know, as I know, that 2 tons of chrome ore becomes 1 ton of ferrochrome. So that means all the platinum producers of UG2s and all the other primary miners, between Samancor and ourselves, we are the only integrated ferrochrome producer. So that means that we, as Samancor and Glencore-Merafe, mine the ore, and we decide to then smelt it and then add value. There are other chrome miners out there that only mine the chrome ore and only export. So they don't have the capacity to convert that into ferrochrome. So it would be detrimental to South Africa if you would have just put in a ban or a tax or something like that without really understanding the economic impacts of that. So to have a tax, it was said over and over, we don't know what that will do. I mean, it could be a blunt tool. So although it could be coming from the right place, but it could be more damaging. So it's very important that we should rather look at incentivizing beneficiation than being a punitive measure. Because what we want is investors to invest in South Africa. We don't want them to be chased away. So I think that's a very important point. And we are working with the government in terms of special economic zones, illegal mining, and those type of things. So that's on the first question. Then obviously we are also speaking to our own customers. I can just speak for myself, Steph, you can also do that, but also having discussions with possible customers out there as well to say, what can we do jointly together? That was also a question. Production capacity of chrome, I think the ones that I can tell you now for me, and I am going to mention the value here, but for me to restart 5 operations that we closed down, not me, Amanda, that's also on call, and her team will be close to 1 billion rand. So it's 1 billion rand that we as Glencore-Merafe must now go and take out to be able to get anthracite, to be able to get chrome, to be able to get everything ready, only to start up. So it's very important that we are also in a position of that we are confident that we can at least stay for that 2 years, trying to at least convert the chrome into ferrochrome on a sustainable way. So that's on the capacity. For us to go and restart the ones that's been idle too long, like Rustenburg and Leidenburg, it's going to be very, very tough because of the environment. If we see that we can find solutions, and we'll come to that now, just now, which is the next bullet point, which is technology, I can tell you that we are investigating a massive amount of technology out there. But you can also understand that we cannot investigate in technology if we cannot even start up. So for me, it's like really the 62 cents is like that entry into the ring. It's that first step towards trying to find further solutions. I can also say that Minister Matashe also said that, yes, it's good that the government gives you now 62 cents, but what do you do as the private companies? And I can say that I concur with him. I can tell you, for instance, is that over the Amanda and her team have reduced the workforce by more than 300 people already, just to try to make us more competitive. And we're also investigating other technologies. So we will definitely have to look at alternative solutions and alternative technologies, which we are definitely pursuing. The upside sharing, there was a question on how sure are we about the upside share. So if there's upside, yes, then both us and let's say Eskom will then share equal in that profit share. But in the downturn, there is no downturn. There is no downturn solution for me. And for that reason, for us specifically, as you know, Glencore-Merafe, that's why we have got a 2-year take-or-pay or a 3-year period, because it's just to ensure what is going to happen 2 years or 3 years down the line. What we are going to do is we're going to do our best to make sure that we can make beneficiation workable in South Africa. So from a downside perspective, we are a bit exposed. But we as a company said, Eskom, you can't take all the risks. We will also be able to take risks. And for that reason, that's why when we had our discussions with Eskom, both parties, both Eskom and us, realized that we are both in this together. Remember, Eskom has got the same exit clause that that let's say Glencore, Merafe would have, and also between Samancor. So even Eskom has got the same let's say hardship clause that we are asking. So we are in this together. We are in a partnership to try to make this work. And that is where, on the downside, we will have to bear with the 80%. That is on, I'm not sure if there's anything additional, Steph, on the first couple of questions from Mr. Mkhize before I go to Mrs. Maseki.
No, happy with that. Thanks, Helpy.
Okay, then Mrs. Maseki asked about the risk factor into the cost competitiveness. I think it's almost the same as the previous one, and that's why the duration is so important for us. Coming back again to the 2 years. I mean, if you ask me, I would have loved a 10-year, because we are invested here. We didn't ask for the 62 just so that we can pull out in 2 years' time. But we must also, like anything, have a hardship clause, the same as Eskom, to say that, unfortunately, it didn't work, or what other type of solutions are we trying to do. I can tell you that we are also invested with Eskom, and we had multiple discussions, even during December breaks. I mean, I'm sure that Gugu and the team, on the other side are now smiling, because we know that during the December break, all of us worked, and we worked on trying to find solutions. And we can't stop here. We know that the 62 cents is a short-term interim solution whereby we can also help the ferro alloys industry, as Steve said, but it's critical that we need to find another solution that will be beneficial to the whole of South Africa. This is the turning point of beneficiation in South Africa, and we've got a responsibility to make that happen. Take or pay, I think I did speak about that in terms of the sustainability. Exactly on the 80%, I think that I also touched on that. Advocate, your question, I'm not sure if I got that 100%. If you could just ask clarity on that again, please.
Okay, thanks. My question was just to try and link up what you have said in your presentation and what is on slide 6. I think you have said that the 62 cents per kilowatt hour was not enough, as it was merely assisting the
yes.
smelters just to compete.
Yes.
And on slide 6, there's an indication there that says that it will also enable the restarting of other smelters that, that were not operational. So I just wanted to find out as to whether by bringing those smelters that were not operating, will that not assist as well the smelters to make some kind of revenue that will enable them to really get some profit, as opposed to saying it's merely allowing you to be competitive. So those two statements, I found them to be not exactly aligned, unless I'm missing something, hence the clarification that I sought. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you, Advocate. And I think it's very valid questions. I can tell you, for instance, again, speaking on behalf of the ferrochrome industry, if you have a look at how many furnaces are idle today. I mean, Samancor, I speak under correction, but has got 5 furnaces running out of 24. And currently, we as Glencore-Merafe has got, let's say, 4 running out of a possible 12 that we can have. So if we so what I'm saying is that we were able to start a blind smelter with the 87 cents, but now with the other, if we can get the 62, we will then restart another 8 furnaces at Glencore-Merafe, and then also Samancor will go back to the 24 where they are currently 5. So 100% agree with you. Obviously, the more furnaces you start up, the more diluted your overhead cost becomes. So I agree with your point there. We must start up everything what we can start up. So we must go back to full production as far as possible, so that we can dilute those overhead costs. 100% agree with you there. And the second one, in terms of the 62 cents, and this is what I've tried to say, is that we know for a fact that 62 cents is not going to be sufficient, or it's not going to be a silver bullet, if I can call it that. We still need, as the companies, we need to go out there and we need to find other solutions, work with partnerships, look at new technologies. And I can tell you that we are looking at a lot of technologies, using efficiencies, using off gases. So there's a lot of improvements that we as the companies must also do. That's what I'm trying to say here. Not only looking into government's eyes, but also taking that full responsibility upon ourselves, if that makes sense, Advocate.
Okay, thank you.
Steph, I'm not sure if you want to add something in terms of that specific submission.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe just one point, and it talks to the question around confidence and on duration. I think what's important, looking back and specifically on the Samancor business, Chair, we as Japie mentioned, on the Glencore side, we fully invested in South Africa beneficiation. If one looks at our history, we have effectively doubled our production capacity in the last decade through procuring smelters, which went into business rescue. That is our commitment, and we understand the industry, and we understand there will be associated risks going forward. But for us, the 62 cents gives us a bit of a level playing field with our competitors, and then it will be up to us to look at employing technology, and also look at a longer term tariff for industry together with Eskom and government, to ensure that we don't have these discussions on a yearly or 6 monthly basis to sustain the industry. So that will be our next focus to move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think at this stage, then I'll ask the members if they've got any follow-up questions. No, I do not see any hands. So on that note, then let me thank once again Mr. Sittard and Mr. Fullard. And then we're now going to go on to our next presenter, Mr. Diedrichs. So, Mr. Diedrichs, can you switch on your camera?
Yes. Can you see me?
Okay, yes, I can see you. And then please raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you are about to give before this panel is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So for the record, please state your name, organization, and designation.
Tom Diedrichs, owner of Renew Consulting.
Thank you. So please remember to forward your presentation to publichearings@nesa.org.za. You may switch off your video and you may also proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to make sure if you can see my presentation.
Yes, I can see it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of the public and NASHA and everybody attending, thank you very much for the time to be able to present today. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, today on Eskom's NPA amendment and the impact of NASHA's decision on consumers' jobs and our economic viability. We obviously all know why we are here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides. We all know we are here for the decision on the 62 cents a kilowatt hour NPA that the smelters are proposing in order for us to have the jobs and the economic stakes and so on. I think that was all very well communicated by both Eskom as well as the previous presenters. While I was preparing for obviously the presentation, I wanted to make sure that I go and have a look at who the companies are. So I included a small public history from what I could find online and so on. And these are the both Samancor and then Glencore-Merafe, who they are and so on and so forth. I'm sure, I mean, it's not the first time they've been in front of you. So if we can just have a look, but I found it important to have a look at who they are, because obviously you read things online and in articles and so on, but it's important for us to realize that there are real people and real jobs and a real history at each one of these companies. Again, they explained it really well, but it is interesting that South Africa, that we hold 80% of the reserves of chrome ore. And what's really sad to me is one of the things that I've seen in my investigation is what Professor Samson from Sanedi said, that when he was speaking on the broader smelting industry, that we've already lost 300 to 350,000 jobs. And so a lot of these decisions have already affected us. So it's not as if a decision today can necessarily bring back those already lost and so on. So we already quite a bit down the road of our losses and so on. Then again, I think the presenters lifted this out sufficiently, but I'm going to just read it because I think it's really important. China versus South Africa. South Africa sits on an extraordinary geological endowment, the Bushveld Igneous Complex, a layered geological intrusion stretching across Limpopo, Northwest, and Mpumalanga provinces. It contains the world's largest known deposits of chromite, platinum group metals, and vanadium. South Africa holds approximately 72 to 80% of the world's economically mineable chrome ore reserves. For decades, South Africa leveraged this resource advantage to become the world's dominant ferrochrome exporter. Cheap electricity relative to global peers and established smelting infrastructure allow South Africa to add value to its raw material rather than exporting unprocessed ore. At its peak, South Africa produced more than 50% of global ferrochrome output. Today, that share has collapsed to approximately 19%. South Africa lost its global lead to China in 2012. The mechanism was straightforward. China began offering domestic ferrochrome smelters deliberate electricity subsidies, rates as low as 30 to 40 cents a kilowatt hour, specifically to attract the ferrochrome value chain away from South Africa. South African smelters facing 900% tariff increases over the same period could not compete. Chrome ore that was once smelted in Middelburg or Rustenburg is now shipped to China and smelted there at a fraction of the energy cost. And below you can see that table. In 2025, the Megaflex tariff was around about R1.96, where China was at that time providing electricity at between 40 to 60 cents. Ironically, the top end of the electricity scale in 2025 is still cheaper than what the ferrochrome guys are asking for. Our share of ferrochrome input was at 19%, where China now exceeded 50%. We lost 31% share since 2012. Again, our chrome ore reserves held is still sitting at between 72 to 80%. We started with 48 smelters. I've now heard that we obviously had the ability to start. We started with 48 smelters, and we've got 4 remaining. We've really lost significant ability to continue smelting. Then again, the jobs at stake on the human cost. As part of my presentation that I've already forwarded to Nasha, I also, and I'm happy to share it with the other members of community as well, have a list of all my references and so on. When you look at job losses, it's always difficult because it's when are you looking at what period and so on and so forth. But the job losses, if we do not get the ferrochrome guys up and running, is going to be significant. And the socio-economic impact is permanent. It was really interesting to me as well, hearing how difficult it will be to restart some of the furnaces. And I think it was one of the points I was trying to make here. The socio-economic impact is permanent and irreversible unless there is serious intervention. At some of the cases, people retire, towns close down. It's not as simple as putting the lights back on and starting to operate again. There is significant cost and a difficulty in finding people if once they let go. I mean, people need to move on in their lives. The Eskom NPA proposal in short terms, again, Eskom current tariff is sitting at around about over R2 a kilowatt hour for the Megaflex users. Depends on time of use and so on. There's a few factors in there. The negotiated pricing agreement tariff that I could ascertain historically for the smelters was sitting at around R1.36. Like I said, they had an interim hardship NPA of 87 cents where they could start a furnace or so on, but they need 62 cents to be economically viable. And Eskom's argument in a nutshell is the deal will be ring-fenced, other customers won't be affected. They need this demand. It's 12.8 terawatt hours of electricity per year, and it's a load retention deal. So this brings me to part two of the presentation that I really want to ask Eskom specifically and Nasha a few specific questions, and also lift out a few things that I found in my day-to-day real world scenarios. So it's the broader crisis. So I'm calling it an entire industry under siege. Eskom cannot have it both ways. I mean, they now say they can be financially viable at 62 cents a kilowatt hour. And 2 years ago in the MYPD6, I mean, they said, look, if we don't get our 36% tariff increase, we're not going to survive. And they stated how things are dire and so on. So it's really difficult. And yes, there's been a turnaround at Eskom, but if you look from the outside, it is a very, very difficult to marry a 62 cent kilowatt hour price with the other. I mean, even earlier this year, when they had an additional increase, because I mean, they came and they pleaded poverty to a certain extent and say, look, we desperately need additional money. And at the same time, they now say, look, guys, don't worry, at 62 cents, we're still making a profit. I mean, if we're looking from the outside, that's 12.8 billion kilowatt hours a year, which is significant. It is a real baseload customer. But if you look at the cost of electricity that the Megaflex is sitting at, I mean, you're looking at a 140 kilowatt hour discount from a public's point of view. I know that there's other factors involved and it's not a discount, but from a public, you're looking at the tariff is 2 Rand. Now it's 62 cents. I mean, there's about a 140, which puts it at around about 18 billion Rand a year or 49 million Rand a day. Then again, the Eskom increases since 2006 to 2026. I mean, 1,172% increase, while CIP was sitting at 174. I mean, six times faster than inflation. 15% a year average increase since 2010 versus 5.2 CPI. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous that this was allowed to happen. And yes, we can argue that the historical tariffs were too low or so on, but what has happened has had significant increases, significant impact on many customers. And then I want to lift out ArcelorMittal, even with an NPA, is still looking like it's going under. I mean, there's just a short history of AMSA and the impact and the historical announcements that they've made. And they also have a negotiated pricing agreement. And here I want to lift out that even though AMSA or ArcelorMittal got a right to have a negotiated pricing agreement, the other steel manufacturers, or many of the other steel manufacturers, don't have that. So, I mean, you have Columbus Stainless Steel in Middleburg, Mpumalanga, that have had a 50% production cut. TransAlloys that had a 600 job direct impact with a Section 189. Osmong permanently closed. Ferroglobe is threatening closure. Highveld Steel already gone. MMC now sprayed under severe pressure. And I mean, this is not the entire list. This is just a few of the companies out there that is struggling. And these companies do not have an NPA. They must pay the Eskom Megaflex tariffs to survive. So I cannot see how Eskom in good conscience can say, you know what, we have this available and so on. I understand baseload customers, and I'll come to that now. Then tire manufacturers. Now we all use tires and so on. And the reason why I'm highlighting them, and that you might think, what do they have to do? I want to highlight how other customers and other consumers are struggling just as much. Bridgestone closed their production in Port Elizabeth, Continental in Eastern Cape, Goodyear in Uitenhage, a company that's been there for 78 years. And Dunlop had their restructured for Ladysmith and KwaZulu-Natal in 2025. And to put that impact into perspective for Eskom and Nasha, there's 5,000 direct jobs just there. No NPA, no special tariffs, nothing. 7 million tires a year annually produced that is now just gone. That's no longer produced. In the Eastern Cape, where we've got an unemployment rate of almost 42%, 3 plants closed there. I mean, the 100% of the off-the-road mining tires are now imported and no longer locally sourced. So if we have a look at this, yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Diedrichs.
Yes.
I think we are now well into your 15 minutes. So can I ask you to wrap up now? Thank you.
Okay. Okay. In close, I just want to say the systematic energy inequality, who is trapped and who is free. I've highlighted this in the past, but there is a serious inequality in the tariff structures and who is free and who is trapped. And we are well within the utility debt spiral. So I've highlighted the increases, the job losses, and where we are heading as a customer, where Eskom has already lost significant sales in their energy with losses to renewables and so on. Nasha cannot continue to approve in silos. Each time a customer comes to you and they have a specific need, they come in a silo, and we look at that, but we ignore the entire rest of the country and the infrastructure and everything around that. It cannot continue to work like this. I have a proposed protected sector framework and key economic pillars. Again, baseload customer is absolutely important. I do want to highlight the fact that if Eskom had a baseload customer definition, it wouldn't look like a discount. It would be separate. Baseload customers are on Megaflex, and customers from 1 megawatt, so in other words, the large shopping centers on Megaflex, because they do not differentiate well enough. It brings us into this position. And then lastly, I agree that Eskom, Nasha must approve the 62 cents a kilowatt hour, but Eskom must present an industry-wide baseload customer tariff framework within 30 days, applicable to all qualifying customers, regardless of sector, equal access and rights on all baseload customer. Halt all tariff increases pending a systemic review. Implement a protected sector framework immediately. Mandate equal wheeling and SSCG access for all commercial customers. Address the 62 cents a kilowatt hour contradiction publicly and on the record, how they can say they can be profitable at 62 cents and at the same time plead poverty, that they can't survive if they don't get an additional increase. Yes, like I said, I will forward all of this to everyone and make sure that everyone have that in front of them. Yeah, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Diedrichs. So at this point, then, I'm going to call upon the members if they've got any questions. Over to you, members. Yes, Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks to Mr. Diedrichs to start off with. I only have one question that won't be the first time asking Diedrichs this. Have you consulted with or engaged with the policymaker for some of the things that you put forth? They also have got some level of policy making posture. Thank you.
Mr. Diedrichs.
Okay, can I answer? Is that the only question?
Yeah, that's the only question.
Okay, 100%. I have started consulting with some of the policy makers. It's a slow process, but I will put in writing and just send to NASHA what has been done and what's the ongoing process with them, and then I'll also forward some of the documents. And if they have any, I mean, if you guys have any assistance or guidance or place where you need, I think I'm happy to go and assist and give my time there to help. But I will forward that in writing as well, so that you can see what I've done and who I've spoken to, so that will help.
Any follow-up questions from members? None. So thank you, Mr. Jedricks. We are now going to call upon the next presenter, Mr. Mzamo Sacha. So can I ask you, Mr. Sacha, to kindly switch on your camera?
Thank you, Chair. Mzamo here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sacha. Then if you can please raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you are about to give before this panel is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear it is nothing but the truth.
So for the record, if you can state your name, organization, and designation.
Mzamo Sacha, and I represent a group of companies under Men's Firm, but in this particular case, we came in with a company called Banati Logistics.
So thank you. And then if you can please remember to forward your presentation to public hearings at nesa.org.za. You may proceed with your presentation and also switch off your video. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd already sent my presentation. I thought you'd do me the honors and do the presentation for me. I mean, rather flight it on the screen. It's just a 2-pager. There wasn't much on it. I'm not sure if you do have it handy next to you.
Can I check with the Secretariat, Mr. Mabunda?
No, Chair. Perhaps we missed it. If we can send it again, we can flight it quickly.
Okay. Oh, that's going to be a bit tricky for me. Okay, let me see what can I possibly do. But in the meantime, what we had prepared was to perhaps maybe come up in line with the thinking that sort of supports the social cohesion, given that there are jobs at risk here, but also in an angle that seeks to say we are intending to advocate for an idea that whereas we are of the idea that the improvement, the approval of the 62 should happen because it is necessary. But there has to be an upside as well for SMMEs like ours, that we find it difficult to enter the market, because we're competing with long existing companies out there in the spaces that we operate in. And we thought it would be necessary that while the approval happens, maybe there has to be a necessary monitoring tool from NERSA's side to see to it that SMMEs are accommodated. Perhaps maybe there's a percentage that you could sort of suggest that it needs to go towards making sure that SMMEs are accommodated and the specific products per se. Let me also say an example of these specific products. You've got a virgin soda ash, which we find ourselves having a difficulty in penetrating that space, even though we've got a substitute that we think we could, which is environmentally friendly. But because the lion's share belongs to long existing entities, we find it difficult to enter the market. Sorry, Chair, I'm talking to you and I'm trying to see if I can get this document quickly. I don't quite have it handy with me. I'm sorry for coming across as this unprofessional. I thought by sending it up front, you would have had it so that you can sort of flight it for me while I'm focusing on the speaking. But yeah, in short, Chair, I think what we are advocating for is, please, it is necessary that we have this approval happening. There is a lot at stake. Our livelihoods are solely dependent on these approvals happening. But I'm saying, while you do the approval, we ask you to assist in monitoring that the communities, not just communities close to these ferrochrome smelters, but generally in South Africa across, are communities benefiting in these improvements that are approvals rather that are done. I think ours is just that one, Chair. There isn't much that we wanted to put across except to say we would like you to put some monitoring tools. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sacha. So first of all, apologies with regards to your presentation, but thanks for saying you're going to resend it. And I think then the rest of the teams at NESA will have access to it. So at this point then, I'm going to ask the members of the regulator if they've got any questions. Over to you, members. I do. Yes, I see Advocate Sithole.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to Mr. Sacha. Mine is just a point of clarity on the first point he made. He indicated that the regulator should ensure monitoring of what would have to be what has been proposed if it does get approved. And he also mentioned as part of that this will ensure that the SMMEs are accommodated on specific products. I'm not sure on that part of the accommodation of SMEs because that is not entirely a role of the regulator, unless if he's indicating that by monitoring this arrangement or the proposal that is before us today, that will assist them as SMMEs to be accommodated by the industries. So if you can clarify that statement so that one gets clarity on it. The part on the monitoring part, I do note that it is part of the regulator, but the other part of accommodating the SMMEs, I'm not too sure if he's implying that that is the role of the regulator, or he is saying by monitoring will ensure that they do get accommodated. If you can clarify that, I'll appreciate it. Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Advocate Sithole. And now I call upon Mr. Mkhize.
Yeah, to a great extent, I'm covered by the my predecessor on this one, Madam CEO. The issue of SMME, I think it will help Mr. Sacha to make firm proposals to a department like DTIC as well as DEE, and then you can CC us in your communication so long with firm proposals, because we all know that the issue of SMMEs is critical in terms of the economic development, reaching out to all the areas of society, noting that we are also a country that is beset by the challenge of inequalities. So please, if you may call that route, or if there are any problems, maybe if you can maybe just elaborate, reflect on this issue. This is just an advice, not necessarily a question, but if you want to reflect on it, you are free to do so right here and now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. So over to you, Mr. Sacha.
Chair, thank you very much. I think I was more than probably, which I do welcome Mr. Mkhize's idea. I think you need a firm proposal. We'll put it together and make it available to TTIC and CCU as you've requested. But Ma'am Sithole, I think the idea here, it is more on the side of saying perhaps annually, you would naturally want to see, having done this approval, how does it translate into certain numbers in your reports? And a part of those that you would probably want to see, how has it accommodated those who were historically disadvantaged in the space? And I'm not really suggesting that on a month-to-month basis you get some reports. No. I think the applicants, I think it's incumbent upon them to give you some report to say, as a result of this approval, this is how it has translated to making sure that SMMEs are accommodated. It could be just a once-off annual report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sacha. At this stage, then let me check with the members if they've got any follow-up questions.
None from my side, other than to note the fact that the fact suggested by Mr. Sacha that over and above the monitoring that we are doing, there should be an element of indication in terms of the SMMEs, and I think that can be looked into. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Advocate Sithole. So on that note, then I must say thank you very much to Mr. Sacha. And then we're going to go to our next presenter, Mr. Duboison. So, Mr. Duboison, I'm going to ask you to, okay, I see you've already switched on your video. And then, yes. Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're about to give before the panel is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I solemnly declare.
For the record, please state your name, organization, and designation.
I'm Teens de Bison, economic researcher at Solidariteit.
Thank you, sir. Please remember to forward your presentation to public hearings at nesa.org.za. On that note, you may proceed with the presentation and also switch off your video.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Solidarity represents many members at both applicants, and therefore it's important to us to make this submission, especially taking note of all the retrenchment processes that have occurred in this industry, the ferrochrome industry, in recent years, as well as in the broader metals refining industry. So first of all, we should take note that the ferrochrome industry is reliant on international markets. So to almost the full extent, they're price takers, but unfortunately for much of their input costs, they have little to no control. And Glencore indicates that the electricity costs make up 35 to 45% of their variable costs and 25 to 30% of production costs. And others in the broader industry estimate these costs at 40 to 60%. So without this negotiated price of 62 cents per kilowatt hour, these costs will continue rising, as we've seen for electricity costs overall. Since 2007, it's increased by 900% compared to general CPI increases of only 103%. So everything else has doubled in the last, since 2007, let's say in the last 20 years, but electricity has multiplied by 9. So that's a stark contrast and devastating to industry. What we've also seen is how important these anchor industries are, often being the largest employer in the towns where they operate. So if they disappear, the entire community is devastated. It's often estimated that for every 8 industrial jobs that are created, estimates are between 8 and 12 industrial jobs, 1 retail job is created. So you can imagine the devastating effect that the closure of such a plant would have on a community. Glencore indicated that at their Western smelters, 1,223 people would be affected, and Samancor indicated that 2,400 people would be affected. If this was to occur, the overall effect would be a loss of 35,000 jobs if these entities were to face a full closure scenario, which is likely to occur if this negotiated price is not affected, because they operate in a strict supply chain where many are reliant on them, and both for purchasing from them and sorry. I don't know what that was. It's not on my side. So it's estimated that smelters contribute to the in the overall industry, if you take the entire supply chain into account, 300,000 people. If the steel industry is included, it comes to more than 500,000 jobs that are dependent on mineral processing. And the only means by which the loss of this industry could be avoided is by offering favorable energy tariffs. So Solidarity supports a long-term agreement between Eskom and Glencore-Merafe and Samancor to supply electricity at 62 cents per kilowatt. We'd like to even see it even lower if possible. We'd like to therefore see Eskom focusing on lower cost primary energy product and means of generation in order to bring this even lower. And we would also be supportive of this agreement being extended to others in the industry. We also call upon NERSA to set up a fast-track mechanism to handle such applications in the future. What saddens me of what we're seeing here in this industry is South Africa has 80% of the world's chrome deposits. So if anyone in the world wants chrome, they should be talking to South Africa. It should be an important driver of economic growth in South Africa. Limpopo, the Northwest should be some of the wealthiest areas in the world if we look at the raw mineral endowment. But instead, we're seeing our minerals being exported to China, and China, with their cheap energy inputs, are killing our industry with our own ores. And that really saddens me. We'd like to see South Africa prosper, and this deal, in our view, would contribute greatly to that vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Du Boyson. So at this stage, then, I'm going to give the members an opportunity to ask any questions. Over to you, members, if you've got any questions. I do not see any hands from members. So I'm therefore going to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Du Boyson for his presentation. So that was the last presenter on our list for the day. So at this stage, then, I'm going to give Eskom an opportunity to...
Sorry, Chair.
Apologies.
You missed one.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, Advocate Sithole.
Chairperson, I think there's a presentation from Meridian Economics. We may have missed it. I don't know. You may just want to check if they are in the meeting to make the presentation. And I think I see Mr. Adam Roth is there, Chair. That's the last presentation.
All right.
Sure.
Apologies. I saw Ms. Madam Nove's hand was also up as well. And it disappeared.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wanting to inform you that Mr. Roth is in the public hearing to make his presentation.
Okay. Thank you for that. Apologies for that. I was just following, the paperwork that I received for this. But thanks for highlighting. So, Mr. Rolf, then can I ask you then to, Mr. Rolf, to switch on your camera?
I have it on, Chair. Can you
all
see
right.
it?
And then I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and then affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're about to give before this panel is the whole truth? So it is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So for the record, please state your name, organization, and designation.
My name is Adam Roth. I work for Meridian Economics. I lead our quantitative analysis and regulatory work.
Thank you. Please remember to forward your presentation to public hearings at nesa.org.za. You can then proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So the context for our submission is around the vital importance of a lawful and meaningful public participation process. And we make this submission with the following aims: to uphold the integrity and credibility of the regulatory process and decisions of the regulator, ensure compliance with the rule of law in allowing the voice of the public to be heard and considered, ensure that decisions of magnitude affecting all citizens of South Africa are made in the best interests of all the citizens, and to recruit the full expertise available in the country in making decisions of magnitude, i.e. not just those in public office. So who is the public in this instance? Who's affected by this decision? So NERSA, of course, is obligated to conduct a public process for all administrative decisions, but this decision is of particular importance as it impacts at minimum all electricity consumers and all taxpayers. So in magnitude, the economic transfer involved here is second only to the MYPD process and exceeds 15 billion rand per year. So this is a consequential decision and requires a high degree of scrutiny. So if we look at the legal requirements of the public participation process, the thread throughout is that of information. In fact, in the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act and the regulations under that act, the term meaningful representations exists in the wording, and it dictates that a public process should contain sufficient information about the administrative action to enable the public to submit meaningful representations. Under the NERA Act, of course, every decision of the regulator must be taken within a procedurally fair process in which affected persons have the opportunity to submit their views and present relevant facts and evidence. Of course, they need real information in order to do that. So we have a very high bar that's been set in respect of information provision by a number of recent court court judgments. These relate to the court cases between Eskom and AfriForum. I won't go through this in detail, but just the highlights of it is that information disclosure is the default, and exemption from disclosure is the exception. The burden of proof in demonstrating whether something should be redacted or not disclosed lies on the public body, and refusal or redaction or withholding of information is only permitted in a case where revealing the information would create probable harm. So in this case, this would be probable harm to Eskom or the applicants. And further than that, it's not just a general assertion of harm. Every item of information that is redacted or withheld needs to be motivated on the basis of specific harm that would be caused by that information being made public. So with that bounding, what can we reasonably expect of this public process? What does meaningful participation look like? So firstly, on the information basis, NERSA should publish a non-confidential version of the Eskom application and the proposed NPA agreements. And any redactions should be subject to a strict test of harm to either Eskom or the applicants. NERSA's consultation document should be a neutral explanatory record setting out the case for the NPAs, the risks to Eskom, other customers, and the fiscus if the NPAs are approved, and vitally, the counterfactual. So what other opportunities were considered by NERSA and Eskom for supplying this much power at a concessional tariff? And what economic, employment, and other socioeconomic benefits could those competing opportunities provide? And from a timetable perspective, the timetable should allow NERSA to properly consider any comments from the public. So if we look at a more granular detail in terms of the NPAs, what is the information that the public would need to participate meaningfully in this process and provide informed comment? So the consultation document states the NPA is a 7-component framework comprising a price path, hardship clause, escalation, deferred revenue mechanism, upside share, take or pay, and security guarantees. So in order to comment meaningfully, the following would be required. In respect to the price path, of course, the starting price, the duration, the escalation mechanism, and any adjustment factor to that. The methodology that's been applied in determining the price. So from the smelter's cost of production, electricity intensity, etc. Cost of supply comparison. So what is Eskom's marginal cost to serve the smelters? And what is Eskom's marginal profit? Is the power being supplied at a loss? In terms of the customer impact and impact on the fiscus, a quantification of the effect on standard tariff customers, on Eskom's revenue, Eskom's costs, borrowing, liquidity, and any government support that Eskom requires. Then regarding the other parameters of the framework in terms of risk allocation, the take or pay level, hardship triggers, the deferred revenue mechanism, security guarantees, termination rights, the actual baseline of the upside sharing arrangement, and the justification for a 50-50 upside split. And finally, economic evidence on jobs preserved, exports and tax revenues protected, probability of closure absent the NPA, and where the other price discount interventions similar to this in other sectors could achieve better public outcomes per rand of support. So this is the information that would be needed to comment. So what information has been made available? through the consultation document and the consultation process. The consultation document merely identifies the nature of the deal, but not the facts. So almost none of the necessary detail has been made available. I've essentially put a line through all the detail that would be required that doesn't appear there. The duration of the deal we have had some clarity on that. The escalation mechanism is disclosed as PPI, but it's subject to an unspecified adjustment factor. So we actually still don't know what the precise escalation mechanism is. So in summary, what information has not been disclosed? Well, almost all the basic information required to assess the deal has not been disclosed. Based on the information provided in the consultation document, which the public has had to work with, we still don't know the price offered. The actual price doesn't appear in the consultation document. And the other key parameter values about the elements of the deal. We don't know how the price was determined. We don't know what it costs Eskom to supply the power. We don't know the impact on Eskom's other customers or government support and therefore the taxpayer. We don't know the exact jobs impact if the NPAs are approved. We don't know the jobs impact if they're not approved. And we don't know the jobs impact if the same concession was offered to other customers in other industry. So all this information would be needed for the public to comment. Of course, virtually all of this information is also required by NERSA to assess the NPA in terms of the interim framework for long-term NPAs against which the NPAs need to be assessed as mentioned in the consultation document. So the consultation document discloses the qualitative architecture of the deal, but it withholds virtually all of the quantitative parameters that are required for the transaction to be assessed. We tabulate those in the appendix. So what does this mean? On the basis of the information disclosed in the consultation document, it's impossible for the public to make meaningful representations. So the process thus fails on the test of procedural fairness, and it violates both the PAJA and the NERA Act. Either NERSA does not have this information, without which it cannot make a rational decision, or it has made a decision not to release it to the public, but has not provided any reasons justifying the non-disclosure. So this procedurally unfair process has excluded the public from being able to comment meaningfully, and the public here includes other experts. It also makes the decision highly vulnerable to judicial review and possible future reversal by the courts, and undermines the rule of law and the regulatory process, which is obviously a foundational principle in our constitutional democracy. So in conclusion, it may well be that the proposed NPA price of 62 cents is the highest the smelters can sustainably pay and the best overall socio-economic solution for the country. But no evidence has been placed before the public in the consultation process that suggests this is so. NERSA should publish minimally redacted copies of the application and agreements and allow a full public process with meaningful participation on this information. In the absence of a legally compliant consultation process, the decision is at risk of judicial review, thereby further delaying its finalization. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. So at this stage, then, I'm going to call upon the members of the regulator if they've got any questions. So I was saying at this stage, then, I'm going to call upon the members of the regulator if they've got any questions for Mr. Roth. I do not see any hands from the members of the regulator. So therefore, I must now take the opportunity to thank Mr. Roth for his presentation. And then I'm now then going to call upon Eskom Distribution to present their closing remarks. Over to you, Ms. Dumagude, or anyone else at Eskom Distribution.
Thank you, Chair. In closing, I wanted to bring to your attention again that this should not be seen as a tariff concession. However, it should be seen as the load retention strategy that is playing a critical role in the South African economy. So in the absentia, or if this is not approved, the consequences in terms of the entire system is far dire. So also in one of the speakers as well mentioned that how come we're able to make a profit while on the other side we are requesting for tariff escalations. So I wanted to also clarify that we never said anywhere in the document or in our submission that we are making a profit. There's no profit that is being made. However, the justification was based on the risk associated with our coal take-or-pay contract, as well as the entire system in the value chain. And then also I wanted to remind Chair and the colleagues that it has been coming up quite often as well around how are we going to mitigate the risk associated with Eskom. It is incorporated as one of our conditions to stay short. The commodity picks up, we will definitely have that upside sharing in terms of the 50-50 split, even though it may not fully recover or fully mitigate the risk. But we are banking on that as we navigate, it will assist us in closing the gap as we move on. Thank you, Chair. I don't know if there's anything to add around the room. There's nothing, Chair. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Dumagude. So at this point, then, we've now come to the end of the public streaming. Oh, I see there's a hand here from Mr. Fullard. Mr. Fullard, okay, let me give you the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair, and also thanks for all the inputs. I just need to also put it on record, if you don't mind, and I do appreciate that some of the colleagues spoke about the public hearing and so on and this, but I would please urge, this is a urge that whatever decision NERSA takes, respectfully so, I mean, ultimately it's going to be NERSA's decision. But if that decision can be made as soon as possible, I want to tell you why. I think it's very important, specifically from our perspective. We were supposed to execute on our Section 189 by December 31st. It's now the end of May. That is 600 million rand, 600 million rand that we have paid our people by extending our Section 189. I cannot extend my Section 189 beyond the end of May 2026. I cannot. My shareholders have made this clear. It's a 5-month period that we've extended or overpaid our people 100%, which we are very proud to say that we could have done that, but surely everybody on the platform must understand that urgency for us is key. And if there's no decision going to be made, right or wrong, I mean, or positive or negative, it doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately it stays NERSA's reasoning, but beyond the 31st of May, unfortunately, I will have to execute my Section 189, and that means retrench thousands of people. So that's the only real urge that I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Say. So at this stage, then, I'm now going to say that we come to the end of the live streaming. So let me therefore take this opportunity to thank all the presenters and all the observers and everybody else who joined us in the various live streaming. Because from the point of view of NESA, we value very much this public participation. So on that note, thank you then to all the members of the public. We are now going to switch off the live stream and remain with the NESA in-house issues. Thank you. And then we will can we then hear from IT that the live streaming has been stopped?
Chair, ICT is on it. Chair, if I may suggest that we go to the pre-hearing link.
Pre-hearing link. So we
Yes,
stop
please.
this one.
Yes,
and we'll go
please,
to the
Chair.
pre-hearing link.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I think let's do that. Thank you very much for that proposal. So we are switching off here and we're gonna go to the pre-hearing link.
Thank you.
Chair.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Mr. Chair.
Chair.
So you are not requesting us anymore, or requiring us anymore, correct?